What's up, everybody? I'm back with another old school review of a movie that I watched way too many times growing up. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, written and directed by John Hughes, starring Matthew Broderick, and it's one of those movies that if you were to put together a list of the best movies of the 80s, this has to be on there in some capacity. For me personally, I don't it's definitely in the top 10 of the best 80s movies, one of those movies that defines the decade. And there's a couple of main things that go with this. And I think the number one reason for the success of this movie is Matthew Broderick. Like in preparation for this video, I watched the film. I saw his performance, his presence, his timing. And then afterwards, I almost kind of thought to myself, could anybody else have done this? Michael J. Fox comes to mind, maybe. He definitely has, a charm to him, but there's a cool factor that Matthew Broderick brought to it that I'm not really sure Michael J. Fox could have brought to this role. And I think that's a really important thing because yes, you have to be funny, you have to be charming, but there has to be that accessibility of cool. It's like because even there's that scene where the high school secretary is describing how other people view Ferris Bueller in school, and it's like everyone loves him. He's a real righteous dude, as she says. And it takes a certain actor to bring all these pieces together. And my conclusion is that nobody else could have done this role. If anybody else had played Ferris Bueller, it would have been a completely different movie. It would have been a completely different performance. Would have been good, who knows? But I don't think it would have had the lasting impact that it had it been somebody else. Another huge thing for me that always struck me about this movie, and I remember when I saw this movie, I was like maybe 7, 8, 9 years old. I was very, very young. And that scene where they're in Chicago and the parade is going on, and Ferris gets up on the float and not only sings Don Shane by Wayne Newton, but then he sings Twist and Shout from the Beatles. And what struck me so hard is like, we sat down and watched this as a family. And apparently everyone else had seen this before I did. If I remember correctly, I think it was a VHS that my brother recorded. And it was kind of his recommendation to watch it. But it almost felt like everyone else had seen it except me. So here we are. I'm enjoying the movie so far. My father is cracking up at Ferris's shenanigans. My sister is looking a bit smitten with Ferris Bueller. But when the song starts and everyone goes nuts and then everyone is singing along, I'm like, what is this? What is going on? Even my mother is singing along to the song. And what struck me, I turned to my dad and I'm like, what is this song? And he's like, that's the Beatles. I'm like, who are the Beatles? So that was my introduction, to the Fab Four. And what struck me the most is just how this one song, this very catchy song, and it just united everyone in that scene, no matter who they were, white, black, rich, poor, working in the office, working in a construction site, with children, without children, young, old, and they're all singing along, enjoying the song. And it's like for that one moment, everyone just kind of came together. And it didn't really matter what your background was. Everybody loved the song. And everybody, it was like a celebration moment. It was really impactful to me because it showed me the power of music. And it even, I saw it recently and it still gave me goosebumps. It's just one of those scenes that I go back to every now and again, even though I don't maybe watch the movie from beginning to end. The premise of the movie is almost inconsequential, really. It's just a movie about a high school kid who wants to not go to school and spend the day with his friends in the city. And also, there's another thing that I find so interesting about this movie is that it's one of the few movies where The main character does not evolve. He's the same guy from beginning to end. It's everybody else around him that changes, that evolves, particularly Cameron. Cameron is a guy that when we're introduced to him, he's pretending to be ill, kind of almost like a bit hypochondriac-ish. But Ferris is slowly kind of brings him out, and by the end of it, he is no longer plagued by fear, specifically fear of his father. And something big happens, and if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, where Ferris's first inclination is like, no, I'll take the rap for this. I'll tell your dad I did this, and, it's going to be okay. And he's like, no, I want it. I want the heat, And there's almost like this moment of like levity, like he felt light and free. He has a smirk on his face, like he knows he's going to get in serious trouble, but he would rather face it than continue living with the fear that he's probably been living with most of his life. And so, just Cameron's evolution it's quite something, and I don't think people talk about it enough. Ferris's sister Jeannie has one as well, but I think the one that always stuck with me was Karen. It was Cameron's, that not being afraid anymore, and just the freedom that he felt by assuming that responsibility and taking that action of like, I'm not gonna be ruled by my fear of my father anymore. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Smash that like button, give me a follow, and I'll see you guys next time.